There is for wind, though. There's I believe it's something like 75% has to be manufactured in China, and that's really what I think helped to promote the industry there. So some of the gearboxes are being imported. Some of the more complicated pieces of equipment have to be imported, but everything else is being manufactured in China. So that requirement has spurred a whole industry in terms of developing the components for wind, and they're actually reasonably priced and are now being exported.
Is China the most exciting foreign market from AES point of view?
You know, it's one of them. I would almost say India might be more exciting because India's probably has more potential for a company like us. As Dr. Schur mentioned, that you have these big 5 state-owned power companies that are quite well-funded. There's plenty of money in China. They're doing a number of things. I think the niches for us will be probably in the renewable sector because there's, as Dr. Schur mentioned, it's not that the incentives are not that clear. You have to look at each project case by case.
Yes.
And it's difficult. I would say this first wind project we're doing, I'd call it a strategic move, which is code for it's probably not the most attractive investment we could make worldwide, but we do think it's moving in the direction of, if you look at what China's, we talk about the goals, I forget the exact percentage that we talked about for renewables, but if you work out the numbers, China's planning to have 600 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2020. Now, to put that in perspective, the United States system today, I think, is about 850 gigawatts. So the renewable sector is going to go from essentially nothing to 600 gigawatts. Now, that's a huge amount of investment. So for China to get there, they'll have to put the incentives in place to encourage investment. So our view is, you want to be there early, you want to learn how to operate in that system to have a foothold, because I think it's going to be the biggest market for renewable energy down the road. A lot of it's going to be small and medium-sized hydro. Geothermal is a huge amount of what they're going after, but still, it's a big market, and we just want to be there. But it's a huge number when you think about it. It's 10 UKs today, because the UK is about 60 gigawatts. That's 10 times that amount.
Dr. Schur, who are your biggest competitors?
Okay, I think at this moment, we honestly think, within our solar sector, because market demand is huge.
Yes.
We don't think we have compared with the sector. But more importantly, I think I always think our competitors, how can we reduce the cost enough to compete with him, right? The conventional power generation, the cost. So that's really what we need to focus on.
And Jim, you don't think that's around the corner?
It depends how far out you can look and see the corner. I think in different uses, you're seeing solar becoming competitive. At the retail level, it's competitive.
Yes.
For rooftops, it may beat the price that comes to you by the grid. The universe that it will be competitive is going to continue to expand. My guess is you're going to see much more coming up in, say, 5 to 10 year time frame, where you're going to see a lot more research going into this, and products are going to drive the cost down. I think there are going to be more government incentives as people try to get away from carbon-based generation. So I think 5 to 10 years it's going to be quite competitive.
So you sound fairly optimistic, basically.
I am. I think it's all you need are a few things to happen. You need some government incentives to tell people to create the market. And once people say, hey, there's a market, then money starts going after that business. People start coming up with good ideas. Thin film starts competing with photovoltaics. People start looking at the third generation, which is what people think is the next big thing beyond thin film, which will have high efficiency and low cost. Now it's on the drawing board for many folks, but it's people like Nate Lewis that are working on those kinds of things that are, I think, pretty exciting. But competing with that, you've got the wind manufacturers and what they're doing with their turbines and the technology. You've got the biomass. So I think all these different components of the energy system are competing against one another, trying to come up and drive their costs down, be more innovative. And that, I think, is going to, it's going to be interesting, because I think as solar comes down, it's going to force other competing technologies to come down. How quickly will they react to it? But I am pretty optimistic.
Yeah, and also I think, in order for solar to reach grid parity, I mean, I remember about 5-10 years ago when work in the lab, we always aim is $1 per watt. That's
the goal.
Cost target. But we don't think we need to reach that level to meet the grid parity. Maybe $1.50 will be good enough because electricity prices keep going up.
Right. Oh, interesting. More questions? Yeah.
2 billion people in the world have no electricity. In China, the percentage is smaller. You've done a great job extending the grid. There's still a lot of people in Western China who have no access to the grid. My question to you, Dr. Shi, is to what extent is Suntech targeting the 2 billion people that aren't likely to be connected to a grid as a potential source of growth for technologies like what you have?
Yeah. And many people say, solar industry is for rich people, not for poor people, because poor people cannot afford to pay the bill. So I think, Chinese government actually, has been, try to help, in that respect. Actually, in 2002, we initiated this brightness program, try to address this issue. So that was a township electrification program. So now I think, in a preliminary stage, we call village electrification program. I think this year and the next year we will try to do it in a large scale. By 2010, I think probably most of this village will be powered by solar and a mini hydro.
Yeah.
Oh, this magically appeared. I'm Jerome Weingart, the Energy and Securities Group in Reston. For Dr. Shi, I just came back from China looking at renewable energy programs there. And I'm wondering, Mr. Hanrahan, you talked about the 30 terawatt world coming in the future, and maybe it'll be a 50 terawatt world by the year 2100. And much of that energy is going to be used in the form of liquid and gaseous fuels. And so I guess my question is, are you starting to look at the intersection of a hydrogen economy and the production of liquid fuels with hydrogen and using sequestered carbon or carbon from the atmosphere and the oceans to produce, in some sense, to synthesize fossil fuels on a sustainable closed circuit basis and be able to provide from the sun, essentially, the liquid and gaseous fuels plus the electricity that we would need in a 100 terawatt or 50 terawatt world?
Okay. Yeah, the hydrogen economy we think is a little bit further away than the solar economy. We've looked into it, but the economics aren't coming down as quickly. I think the one area that we do think is pretty intriguing in the near term is closed loop biomass. Closed loop biomass is a way to basically, on a net zero basis, produce electricity. You basically take crops, you burn the crops, you produce electricity, you then replant the crops which absorb the carbon. That economically looks like that's feasible today, and that's something we're actually spending a lot of time looking into as to how can we make something like that happen. There are going to be limits to that, however, because you've got a certain amount of land that's available for people. You've got to grow crops. So that puts a limit on it. I think beyond that, the hydrogen economy, I think that's a little bit further out, but that's got to be part of the equation. We haven't quite figured out how to make that something that's going to be economic in the next 5 to 10 years, however, as best we can tell, but we haven't spent enough time probably looking into it.
Yeah, I think to solve this long-term solution, I guess we cannot rely on single technology to fulfill that. Yeah. It's a combination of everything. Like, we talk about geothermal and this biomass and bioethanol, biodiesel. That's more like for transport, for transport. Hydrogen can also be used for transport in the fuel. So solar can be used to say, produce hydrogen as well as to produce electricity. So we believe in the future is a combination of all this. Yeah.
First of all, I've enjoyed very much this discussion. It's been very informative. I'm Linda Conlon. I'm the Vice Chair of the Export-Import Bank of the United States. Hopefully, most of you know who the Export-Import Bank is. For those of you who do not know, we help to finance U.S. exports, have worked over the years with AES, have worked with much smaller companies as well, to the tune, since our inception, or since we were established in 1934, we've helped to finance in excess of $450 billion worth of U.S. exports. What may be not known is that we're very much focused on helping to finance the export of environmentally beneficial goods and services, including clean technologies. Recently, we had seminars out in California. I was very impressed by the innovative, entrepreneurial companies, U.S. companies out there. So my question to all of you is, what is the future for these kinds of companies, as well as larger companies, as we go forward? Because we certainly want to be in the business of helping to finance the global exports of these companies. How do you see the markets for these U.S. companies going forward?